Hi, Diefesters. My name is Rudinov Vincent, and I am the founder of Diefest Global. A warm welcome to you all on the third edition. This year, Diefest will focus on the future of work by addressing authenticity, belongingness, and social impact as some of the most important practices for building a more inclusive and purpose driven workforce for everyone to thrive. On this note, I would like to warmly welcome you to our session on how does the world's leading automaker use data to build their workplace disability inclusion strategy. Our moderator for today is the Managing Director of Employer Services for National Organization on Disability. She brings over 20 years of experience making the connection for businesses to the untapped talent pool of people with disabilities. Most importantly, she has experienced the value of disability inclusion in her own business and through her work in the staffing industry, created talent acquisition programs dedicated to mitigating talent gaps while increasing integrated competitive employment opportunities for people with disabilities. Please welcome Felicia Nurmsen.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Rudolph. I do greatly appreciate it. Thank you for inviting us here today to speak. It really is my pleasure to introduce Stephen Lewis, who is the General Manager of DEI for Toyota Motor North America. I'm sorry. And really my pleasure to have been working with him now for several years. It's hard to believe how long we have been working together. I couldn't believe it when we looked at the year, and I think it was 2017 is when we started. And we are going to have a conversation today just about how Toyota has been able to use the National Organization on Disabilities Disability Employment Tracker to really help to not only build their disability inclusion strategy, but really in making some changes. And they've made some really significant investments. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today, Stephen. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, I think that would be fantastic and just give us a little bit of background.
Well, thank you, Felicia. Great to be here. And thank you, Rudolph, for inviting me to join the conversation today. So I'm Stephen Lewis. I'm General Manager of Diversity and Inclusion at Toyota North America. So we are the automaker and we are a financial services firm. So our D&I team takes care of all parts of Toyota and our business here in North America.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So before we get started, I do want to do you want to talk just a little, because I think it's such a great story, right? Talk a little bit about how you met our president, Carol Glazer.
Well, so we have been participating in the Diversity Inc. survey for, a long time, 10, 12 years, something like that. And they were having an event in New York. So I was there for that. And I think it was 2017, I want to say. I think that was right. And so I got an invitation to meet with Carol Glazer, who's the CEO of NOD, while I was there. She suggested a Starbucks around the corner from where we were having our event. And I thought, well, I don't really know NOD, but I've sort of heard of them. I think I'd heard him mentioned in diversity circles, and I said, why not? There's nothing to lose. So I met Carol, and there was another guy there. What was his name? But anyway, we had a very pleasant conversation. We just talked about, the state of disability inclusion, what was Toyota doing, and I was, kind of like puffed up, proud of myself. I said, we get it at Toyota. We have a Sienna that we offer a conversion van for, and we sponsor the Special Olympics, so we must get it. So I'll just go in and I'll hold my head high, and we'll have this conversation. Well, anyway, we did have a good conversation, and sort of learned a little bit more about the tracker survey, and Carol invited me to participate in that. and I think this was around April when we had that meeting, and the tracker came out the following year, so in January. So I said, okay, well, no, why not? We'll take it, and so we went from there.
I just think it's a great story because it was one of, you know, it really that it just happened at the right time and that it happened in a
Yeah,
Starbucks, right? Of all
you
places.
never know.
There you go, right? Let's have a seat. Let's find a seat that's close to where you were, you know, because it was downtown. It was in the financial district. So that's where we were. That's where our headquarters were. So it all made sense and it really came together. So thank you for sharing that. Again, I think it's just such a great story and shows that it can happen anywhere. Finding good
and
partners, you never know when that's going to happen. So I'm
and then I think I was in town, for something else, and uh, maybe it was I see my memory's fading. I'm getting up there,
gonna.
but I came around to the office, and then I met Felicia,
Yeah.
and so that's how we kind of got to know each other, just because serendipity.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
right.
NOD's office at the time happened to be close to that Diversity Inc. event,
Yeah.
so you just never know.
You don't, and it was. And you know what? I think you came in. I was thinking about this. You came in to talk about the Look Closer campaign. We wanted to
That's
talk.
right.
We were just getting ready to launch that. And then we had the conversation about the tracker and really how we could support you. And yeah, it was a great meeting. It really was. And you always said, oh, I felt like I was so tired during that meeting. And I said, well, we didn't
I was hiding a cold, but anyway.
know. So I'm going to take a minute for those people that do not know about NOD. I'll just tell you a little bit about us. We are a 40-year-old. We just actually celebrated our 40th anniversary nonprofit organization that really started out advocating for all people with disabilities in all areas of life. It's really just been in the last 12 years that we have specifically focused on the workplace. And that is because, well, we have seen significant changes in a lot of our policies as it relates to people with disabilities and accessibility, kind of the curb cuts and some of the other things I think that we take for granted now. We haven't seen that much progress as far as employment is concerned. So we knew that not only people with disabilities needed some assistance with that, but our companies needed some support with that. And not only understanding the value of employing people with disabilities, but really helping companies to understand how to do that, right? And what better way than to really have this free tool, which we're talking about today, the Disability Employment Tracker, for companies to use to benchmark themselves against other companies that are really very invested in disability inclusion, as well as just to be able to measure your own progress year over year. You can see where where you may continue to have gaps, where you have those strengths that you can build on, and really where you're starting from. Because all of us know, you have to know where you're starting from in order to get to where you want to go. So as I said, we have had the pleasure of working with Toyota since 2017 now. The tracker certainly has changed over the last 5 years. We have taken some measures to ensure every year that everything that we are asking on that tracker is valid. It is something that is driving disability inclusion within those companies that not only are completing the tracker, but that we're talking to on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And what are their concerns? What practices have they put in place that really have allowed them to make the changes that they want to? Last year was our most significant change in recent years because we started to ask questions about employees with disabilities as it relates to the employee life cycle. And that is looking at from attraction through the hiring process, promotion, retention, and development, et cetera. And we really were so happy to see that companies are tracking that. within their organizations, that they are looking at where people with disabilities fall within those categories throughout the employee life cycle. But there's still a lot of work to be done there. Many companies are not. Disability continues to fall short among our other diversity, equity, inclusion focus points. So that's why we really wanted to have this conversation today, because while Stephen says he thought he got it, he really did. And he really has been instrumental in taking this forward for Toyota. So I'm going to ask you, I do have a couple of questions that I really would like for us to just think about and discuss as we look at Toyota's overall success, because I will say this is a success story. We have been very lucky to see Toyota continue to grow and to work with you on that. So when you think about why it was important for Toyota to take the tracker, what were some of the driving kind of thoughts behind that, or the driving force behind really wanting to continue to grow and think about how can you not only increase, right, but enhance your disability inclusion?
Well, our whole culture is based on continuous improvement. I think that's sort of well known for anybody that studies manufacturing. And so, based on that, we do okay in the Diversity Inc. survey, but there's always room for improvement. And so, after learning a little bit what the tracker was about, my thought was we'll take it this coming year and just see what it's all about. How much time does it take? Do we learn anything from it? And so we did. So we took it, and and I have to say we got the results back in the spring or summer, whenever it was, and it was a sobering experience, actually. So there are six measures that the questions get at, and I, I just jotted them down so I remember. Climate and culture. We did pretty decently in that one. But another one is talent sourcing. We were below benchmark in talent sourcing. Another one is people practices. We're below benchmark in that. Um, Workplace and technology, below benchmark. We had no idea. Strategy and metrics. I come out of a strategy group. I thought we were pretty good at that, but nope, we're below average in that. And then veterans employment, that's their sixth category. And I'm happy to say, we did pretty decently in that. But based on the way the surveys came back, and, we just answered the questions as they came up, we're just, it was totally honest, and it came back, we needed help. And so that was a bit of an eye opener for us. And it really started this whole journey of trying to get better, trying to, have this be true to our culture of continuous improvement, along with NOD as a partner to help us get there.
So when you say that, right, when you say you decided to reach out to NOD, what did that look like? Like, really, what were you, when you came back to us, what were you thinking about as far as what kinds of supports that we might be able to provide to you? And how did we go about that as far as the engagement was concerned?
Well, the categories made sense to us. It's logical, and I think there was some good thinking that went into that. And so the logic for coming back to NOD was, things like talent sourcing and, our own internal people practices. I didn't know really where to begin. And it seemed like to me we needed to do a deeper dive into our own company. And, you know, I've worked for Toyota a long time. I know the company very well, but I think an outsider's perspective can be very useful sometimes because they help us think about things that, you know, are just not apparent if that's the way it's always been. So that to me was the beauty of getting NOD to sort of um, help us think through what we can do to make things better.
So we sat down, we looked through all of the questions as Toyota had answered them. We came to Plano. We sat down with a very large team that you assembled for us, cross-functional team that was pulled throughout Toyota in the different areas that would impact really the changes that needed to be made, and the opinions and the input that we really needed in order to make the appropriate recommendations. We did focus groups. We were able to then come back and make those recommendations. And they were in different areas. We like to say, we try to give you the short term recommendations that you can implement right away that then help you to build that momentum internally. So we had short, medium, and long term. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the changes that you made as a result of the work that we were able to do together? And I want to make sure that I frame this appropriately, because this journey has been a journey. It wasn't that we
Yeah.
came in one day, we did this, and then the following week you were making the changes that we recommended. That
Well,
definitely
no,
was not.
it is a journey, and anybody else that is, on this path, you can't fix everything in a week. It is a process, especially the bigger the company is and the more people you need to get involved, and there's just a lot of complexities to work through. But you know, NOD did come back with some items that were actionable, and we've been chipping away at them ever since then, to be honest. Still work to do. I don't think we're ever going to be done, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But one of them was to elevate disability as a priority in our own company. So I can tell you, disability is part of our formal diversity strategy now. I mean, it's documented, it's on paper. Everybody knows that. So that was, it sounds simple, but it's meaningful. We've done some adjustment in our recruiting. We have a recruiter now who is a specialist in disability recruiting, which we didn't have before, which has really helped open up the sourcing pipeline. Um, and in this idea of just elevating disability as a priority, we have an external diversity advisory council, actually a board. They're lofty. Um, And so we meet with them twice a year. And at the last one, just a couple of weeks ago, our ERG Toyota Ability presented directly to these members of the Diversity Advisory Board. So that's steps that we've taken just to elevate it in the company. Um, we've worked on our accommodation process to try to streamline that. That's still a work in process, but we know we've got to do more on it. And, as we've brought attention to it, you know, and leveraging our own respect for people culture, the NOD got to know us and they suggested some items we could do that align with that part of our core value. So we've expanded training. We've tied it to our mobility efforts. Um, Actually, as part of that, I don't know if this was NOD's recommendation or if HR just came up with it on their own, but we started self ID after we engaged with NOD, and disability is a big part of that. But the beauty of self ID is you can have multiple categories. So we um, gave people the ability to identify as more than one race. They couldn't do that before. Um, we added sexual orientation, gender identity, and veteran status, in addition to um, self ID around disability. So that was a huge step forward for us. Now, the challenge is, there's always work to be done. Now we've got to get more people to go into our HR system and actually do the checking the appropriate boxes, because our rate is not what it should be. I think in the last time I looked at it, we have about 3% of our team members that identify as having a disability. Well, we know the real rate is around 20% if you count hidden aspects of it. So there's a lot of work to be done with that. We're actually working with another vendor to try and help us develop a campaign around that. Um,
Mhm.
to ask, okay, why do you want to know if I have a disability or not? So we've got a lot of work to do around that. And
No,
so
absolutely.
those are just some of the examples that I would say NOD was the catalyst for us um, taking some action.
And that's a lot. Right. I just need to say that's a lot. And the reason why is because not only do we come in and talk, we also look at your policies and process. So that's when we come in about that, right? Let's ask these questions as part of your application process, as part of the follow up, et cetera, and not just have it be about disability, right? Because if we're
Mhm.
building this, then let's build it out so that it it encompasses everything that you would hope to gain from data, right? So we want you to get the data the first time rather than having to go back in and then let's rethink this as it relates to our other diversity pillars. So that was it, really was. I also want to mention that you made a significant investment with accessibility with your facility, which was really easy to see. I know when I visited for the first time, really fantastic as far as accessibility is concerned. And you did that fairly quickly once you saw and the recommendations
Yeah.
that were made, you were able to really put that into take those recommendations and make that actionable quickly.
So I can give the details on that. We moved into our new facility in 2017. I mean, it's like this big, huge campus, you
Mhm.
know, beautiful place. But as it turns out, it was not as disability inclusive as you would think for something that opened, in the 2010s, say.
Mhm.
And as it turns out, in our entrances, um, they were not wheelchair friendly. Um, Sometimes they were hard to get through, and the badge readers, we had nothing at wheelchair level, so we had to do a retrofit of all of that. Um, it just goes to show that design is important. But I'm proud of Toyota that you know we at least fixed our issue, so to say, and you know you live and learn.
Absolutely. So I want to go back to, right, again, when we think about timing. So how long did it take, right? And as far as from when we first came in and we first did that, the first engagement of really talking about, let's look deeper. You asked us to look deeper. We came in, we made the recommendations. And now, how long has that taken, right? When you think about the journey, Stephen, and I really want for people to understand this because I think that sometimes there are organizations or companies out there that look at this like, well, this is, the opportunity for us to do this. So we're just going to, we'll hang our sign out, our shingle, hiring people with disabilities, and we're going to go forth and conquer. And it doesn't necessarily happen that way. You can hang that shingle out, but unless you've done some of the work, you're really not going to see the people that you hoped that you would see.
Yeah, it's a long journey, I'll tell you. You can do some things quickly. Um, you know, you can bring in a recruiter that specializes in disability recruiting, and you can maybe change your internal diversity statements. I mean, there are things that you can do quickly, but I think that but it is more of a journey if you really want to make progress. And I want us to become a top company recognized for disability inclusion. We're not quite there yet,
Mhm.
and we've been at it for 5 years, maybe next year. But it's really about continuous effort and just saying, okay, what next? What next? What can I do next? How do we keep getting better? I mean, to me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. It really is. And that's why I think that it's just, and I like the way that you really have approached this because anytime I think we have said, and like I said, we've been working very closely now, especially for the last 2 years, um, But, in thinking about our, the whole partnership, it really has been a partnership. It's never been, you are, okay, so Toyota's our client and we're a vendor. It's never been that. It's that any challenges that we have faced together. And I think
That's
that that
right.
is so important, is that because that's why I think it has worked so well, is that any questions, any challenges that have arisen, we've been able to have those very transparent conversations as partners, and then overcome, right, together.
Well, I just see NOD as a trusted partner. I know the people and I know where they're coming from. They're coming from a good place. And their whole mission is about companies like ours um, becoming better for people with disabilities. I mean, that is the mission. It's not, they're not supporting a lobbying arm in DC or, any of these other things. Their whole mission is about disability in the workplace, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. It's just totally, um, right along the lines of what our own mission is. And so, from the very start, I knew that NOD and Toyota would be perfectly aligned.
Thank you for that. So talk a little bit about, let's get back to kind of the details, right? How long did it take you or the team to complete the tracker?
Well, it's not easy, I will say. You know, um, we're sort of used to it because we are part of the Diversity Inc. survey, and that is a really time consuming. I think the survey, the period lasts a couple of months, and NOD is similar, although it's just it's disability related, but it takes an effort. So we have to get input from our HR, our talent team, our policies people. Um, you know, our team sort of gathers the data and puts it into the questionnaire, but we don't really own the data. That comes from all different parts of the company. I mean, it's not oppressive or anything, but we want to do a good job with it and we want to be honest about it and we want it to reflect reality. And so that does take some coordinating and time. Um, and because of that, we've really only focused on three surveys. So Diversity Inc., of course, HRC, and NOD. I mean, those to me are the priorities. Um, So I think it's worth the time. It's a little bit of effort to gather the data and do the survey, but I think that when you get the results back, you can see exactly where you are strong and where maybe you could put some effort, just like we did. Um, and I think there's value in that. Some of the other surveys I've seen, you go through all this effort and the results are you're a red light, a yellow light, or a green light. Well, okay, that's sort of nice. I'd like to be a green light, but it doesn't really tell me a whole lot. And so the NOD tracker is very data driven, data oriented, and you can hone in on exactly where you need to focus your energies. And that to me is the beauty of it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I want to ask too, just a little bit about, we know that so many countries outside of the US really focus strictly on meeting compliance requirements. And while you certainly can use the tracker in that way, you can use that as a tool just strictly to measure how you are doing as far as your compliance requirements are concerned, as it relates to disability inclusion. Why was this so important for Toyota to do this? And then talk a little bit about how
Well,
that fits in with the work TFS is doing around the globe, if you can.
well, we're a global company, so the the motor sales and the manufacturing part rolls up into our parent company in Japan. Um, and, you know, the Japanese diversity um, issues are different from ours, obviously, but we perfectly align on disability inclusion. Japan is an aging society, and they care a lot about disability, especially as it affects people as they, go through the years. But the other part that we have in the US, Toyota Financial Services, it reports up into Japan too. However, reporting up to the US company, TFS, where we're doing this project, um, Latin America reports in to us, into us, and so do Australia and New Zealand. And so we can affect some of the disability inclusion um, policies and other global affiliates from the financial services side, and and that's been good to see that it can have an effect beyond our own borders.
It really is. I just loved that when we met the last time when I was in Plano, and we talked about that, right? That there is so much more that can be done. Like this is just to your point, Stephen, right? There's still work to be done. There's going to continue to be work to be done because you're not only doing this at headquarters, you are doing this in other manufacturing areas. I'm really happy that I'm going to be able to shine a light on that at the Retail Industry Liaison Group's conference next year with your vice president that's in Indiana, Ted.
Oh
He's
yeah.
been doing some great work, right? And bringing it out from there. I know we've talked to the executive sponsor for the work that we've been doing together at corporate, as well as your call center, CEC, about the possibility of then bringing this to the dealerships and helping them to then become more disability inclusive and hiring people with disabilities. And as it relates to that, I would love it if you could talk just a little bit about social innovations. I think that group is amazing. I know when I first met them, it was just over the phone, but what that group does, and that falls under you, is really fantastic. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Oh, well, we have a group at Toyota called Social Innovation, and the idea is that we combine the external work, um, sort of known as philanthropy, but also community support. So that's the external part. And then we have the internal part, which is diversity and inclusion. We're focusing on our own team members and the experience. And actually, the two have more to do with each other than you would think. So as we're doing our external community work, we're really focusing on it in the Dallas area where we're headquartered. There's a particular underserved neighborhood that we focused all of our energies into, and we're trying to build up STEM education in that neighborhood. And and really everything is channeled there, and the hope is that we can build up this community, and maybe some of those kids might come work for us someday in IT or something, and wouldn't that be great? Really, really long term, maybe they'll even buy our cars, but we're really thinking more of employment and labor shortages, right? And long term, it's going to be an issue, I believe. And then from the other angle, we have really great ERGs. We call them business partnering groups. And so, they're about, a lot of things, but part of it is community work. So maybe, they can do mentoring in the schools in this area we're focusing on. And so it's sort of like a circular thing, we give to the community gives back to us, and we all help each other out.
I love that. I really do. I think that again, it really was it was so great to be able to meet them originally, initially when we first started working together and to hear about the kind of work that they were doing. And then now I have really been able to see them continue and grow and really see how they really can make an impact. And that's
Mhm.
for all stages, right? It's about looking at disability inclusion. One of your people is the head or the chair of Toyotability. that's on that team. So there's so much that really is, there's a lot of interaction there. Like you're saying, you're working together and really being able to have impact internally as well as externally, and putting people to work as a result of that as well. And you hit it, you really hit the nail on the head with that last comment, Stephen, because I think that ideally that's why we came together, is because you really did see the value of, not only do we need to make these changes for our existing employees, we really need people and good people. And this is an untapped population for us to work with, understand how to attract and retain them. Do you think that's a fair
And
statement?
that's a fair statement. You know, that's one of the reasons why we're doing the neurodiversity work, that we're partnering with NOD now. You know, we need people to come work for us. We need talent. We need brain power. And the disability community is a source of brain power for us. I mean, we need that. And so I don't know that people necessarily think about it in those ways, but we should, because we need, you know, we need the help. And I would rather us hire them than somebody else. So it can be a competitive advantage if we can get it figured out and channel those people to come work for us.
Well, you're definitely on the right track. I can say from, again, from the team that you have been able to put together internally as it relates to really the hiring piece of this, right? You've moved into different areas now. You're on, well into the hiring phase. And, the cross-functional team, again, that you put together in order to make that happen, and the investment of time that they made in order to ensure, we had everybody from, an employment attorney to your head of TA, your head of HR. We had you on almost every call. That's a big investment for a company like Toyota. But it really did show that we are committed to making this successful. And at one point, I think, we had, one of your executive sponsors just say, flat out to all of your senior leaders, this can't fail. And there's no better directive, right? We're bringing people in. This can't fail.
Yeah, when you're told from above it can't fail, that kind of tells you what you need to do.
Exactly. One other thing, I think that I want to leave time for questions. We have like I think it's 6 more minutes. But one thing that I did want to mention, and that I know that we were very honored when you came to us and talked to us about having Mark Templin join our board of directors. And he is the president of Toyota Financial Systems. And we're so, it felt, again, that just showed the kind of partnership that we had. And I'm so happy that it turned out that it was really something he's very invested in as well. And he was able to join our board as a result of the work that you've been doing, Stephen, internally, and being able to show that investment. And I know we felt really honored with that.
I can tell you he cares a lot about the topic, and he loves the work on the NOD board. And, every time I see him, he's enthused about it. He has something to say about it. And so what a great partnership.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So let's see. I know that Sean has been putting some comments in here for us. I do want to see if there are any questions. I also do understand that many people will register for a session now, as we both know, so they can listen to it as the recording. So we don't have any other questions. All right. Well, that's a good thing. That means that we have covered things really well. What do you think? What do you think as far as, when you think about the tracker, you think about how you have utilized it at Toyota, what would be the advice that you would give to another company out there that may not be taking the tracker, that may not have, any information about it? What's the advice that you would give?
I would say give it a shot. The next one's coming up in a couple of months. So just take the tracker. If you're HR, you're right there. You've got the data. If you're somewhere else in your organization, just get the data and fill it out. It, it, it's not as hard as I made it out to be. You just need to dig and find where the answers are, and you can get it done. But, you know, I would just say give it a shot and see what the results are. You might be surprised, like I was, but you can't do anything without data, and you need to know where you are, in order to get better. And so, to me, the beauty of the tracker is it does give you your data, and it shows you where you stand versus where you know the other companies taking the tracker are. I mean, I can't go in and see what Honda did, but I can see what the top quartile looks like, and I want to be in the top quartile. So if your if your boss like mine says, "Well, how do we measure up against the other auto companies or the other top companies?" You know, you may not be able to get exactly what your top competitors doing, but you can get a good idea of what you should be doing. And I will say this. I hope you don't mind, Felicia, but I believe there's another disability survey out there. A couple of years ago, my boss came to me and said, "Why don't we take this one too?" Well, like a lot of us, my um, my plate is full and my team's plates are full. We don't have time to just take on more and more and more. So it was really a matter of taking one disability survey, and I understand that there there may be easier ones, less time and be even easier to get a check mark or whatever it is. But I am absolutely convinced that NODs is the most useful because it really gives you the metrics. And if you really want to get better, NOD is the one to take.
Thank you for that, Stephen. I know, again, we really have tried year over year to continue to make that, make the tracker even better and to help companies to understand how they can be successful. I think that's why we were so happy that now we can show some of those business practices that are driving, right? That do drive people to, attract people to certain companies. What is it that, helps for us to retain and promote people? So we continue to look at that. We listen to you, we listen to our other partners about what's important and really try each year to make that even better. We've added mental health to our survey now. We've added more and more questions around accessibility because we do know that's top of mind. And none of that would happen without partners like Toyota and others giving us your constant feedback, and really helping us to continue to be the best that we can be. So I really want to thank you for being here today with me. I enjoy working with you and the entire team
Thank
of
you.
Toyota. And thank
My
you so much.
pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.